Hi there, I'm Mary Susie from Bead Me a Story. Thanks so much for joining me and making this project. You are going to have a great time. I've taught this in person and everybody who took this class had just a fabulous time making this. Every part of this is really pretty beginner and it allows you to experiment with some different things that you don't normally work with. I would consider this a mixed media project and we're just using bars. We're getting a really nice length out of a necklace that works up fairly quickly. I would say this will probably take you about 2 to 3 hours to make. In the kits, I used Miyuki spacers and Toho demi rounds, but don't be limited by that. You can use any kind of size 8 bead that will fit onto jump rings. And I will just say that if you do decide to use different kinds of beads in these little in-between sections, that you might only use 1 bead instead of 2 in the row so that it's a little bit easier to close the jump ring. And as long as it's all sufficiently randomized, it's going to look fantastic. The other thing you can do is add fabulous pendants and lampwork beads to these projects. So if you want to put some different things in between, like some other chainmail weave, some other chain, break it up with some lampwork beads, some things like that. It's gonna look fantastic. I've done many of these and they're all beautiful. They all worked out great. I mean, you just can't go wrong with this particular project. So I hope you're gonna have a great time. And without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so to start this project, you can see I've got my bar connectors here. I have my Sari ribbon. I have a popsicle stick and I am going to take the glue and I'm just going to put a little dab of it out here. You don't need a lot. Okay, just maybe the size of a dime. This will take you through most. You can always add more glue out on your scrap piece if you need to later. I'm just going to take my Sari ribbon and I'm going to kind of spread it out. Some of them will look skinnier and some will look thicker, and it doesn't really matter, because you'll be able to just keep wrapping around the bar until you feel like you have it filled up. Okay, so I just put a little glue on here to get this started, and I fold it over, and then I'm going to wrap the Sari ribbon around the bar 2 or 3 times. Okay, so just to make sure it's covered. I oftentimes will get a lot of little bumpies. There'll be little weird pieces that have fuzz on them. That's totally okay. We want that texture in our piece. Okay, so now that I've wrapped this around, I'm going to cut that off. And then I'm going to add just a touch more glue to the other side. And finish wrapping. Okay, and then I'm going to take my clip. Now you could just hold this in place until it sticks, but I'm going to take my clip and clamp that. Okay, and then I'll set that one to the side and move on to the next one. Okay, so you don't need 20 clamps. If you have maybe 4 or 5 or even 3, you could do a couple and then take the clamp off the first one and do one and then take the clamp off the second one. Okay, so whatever you have available is fine. If you don't have anything available, that's fine too. You'll still be able to do this. Okay, so we're just going to wrap. Okay, and see how there's a little ledge at the top? It's okay if it overlaps that, but that's nice because it gives you a guide of where to start and where to finish. Okay, I'm just going to cut my... Okay, so you'll notice I didn't pre-cut the Sari ribbon. I just work with what's before me, and I just keep wrapping these up until I get all 20 of these done. Okay. And then, you see my glue is not thick. It's nice and thin. You don't need a ton of glue. This is just holding the ribbon in place until we can get the wire and beads around it. Okay, so keep going with this part until you have all 20 of these done, and then we will move to the next step. Okay, so for the next part of this project, we are going to be looking at a couple different ways of how to get the beads onto your wire. Okay, so if you have a bead mat, then you can just simply, this is not a bead mat, so my beads aren't just popping onto here, but you can just, you know, use the tip of your wire to go ahead and pick up your beads. So these are spacer beads. You can use either the 3mm spacer beads or Toho demi beads or size 8 beads. So size 8 beads are twice the size of a spacer or a demi. So these are basically half as thick as a size 8 bead would be. Okay, so you need about 30 inches of size 8 beads. So that tells me you probably want about 15 to 20 inches of these spacer beads. Okay, so it'll be like half. So you can see I'm just picking them up and putting them on here. So this is another option. So you can use a bead mat and let them pop up onto the wire. You can use the pickup method, or you can use a bead spinner. So this is just a mini bead spinner. You can see this comes in two parts. It has its little pedestal, and then it has the part that holds the beads. So I just dumped all my beads into here. You want to use about half of them to go onto your wire, just to give you perspective. And when I first started using a bead spinner, I thought I was going to use it like forward, like I just bent my wire and, you know, they would just hop up onto there, and I was like, well, this doesn't work very well. I mean, it works okay. I got a few, but really the best way to do this is to curve the wire back towards yourself and then just tilt it down just ever so slightly, okay? And you're basically going, well, I have it over on this side counterclockwise, or if I had it on this side, I'd go clockwise. But basically what you're trying to do is just let this wire skim at the top, okay? This is not going down into your beads. It's just going to skim the top so that when you spin, I'm going to spin it from the side just to see all those beads popping up onto here? Okay, so bead spinner is just going to make this faster. You don't have to have one to do this project. But I thought it was really fun to have a project that used this just so you could see how to do this. And so you can see that, you know, I'm spinning so it's coming back towards me, but I have the hook of the wire coming back towards myself so that these can just pop right onto here. And I just let it kind of skim the top and then let them fill up the wire. Okay, so like I said, you just want to keep going until you have about 15 inches or so on this. You can always add more later. This is not like when you do bead crochet or something like that where you have to put everything on all at once. We're just going to be wrapping a few beads around each piece of the Sari ribbon. So if you run out of beads, it's totally okay because you can just go back and add more to the rest of your wire. And we don't have to cut off the wire until we've used these beads. Okay, so that is loading beads onto wire so that we can continue with our Sari ribbon pieces and wrap these with wire and beads, which we will do next. Okay, so now I have about 15 inches of beads loaded onto this. If you're using size 8 beads, go more like 30 inches, 25 to 30 inches. Okay, and I'm just going to take my wire, and on this first piece, I'm just going to see how I'm using my left-hand finger to kind of push this around. I want to use as much of this as possible, so I'm just going to kind of smooth the end of this around here, and I want to wrap it 2 or 3 times up around the top of this, and if it overlaps itself, great. Okay, then what I want to do is I want to count out, there's 5, 10, 12. Okay, so I want around 12 beads for each of these. You do more or less on your own, do what you feel. And then I'm going to start wrapping this around, and I'm going to kind of break these up. So you can see I left 2 here. Let me just leave 1 here. Well, it wants to have 2. I only want 1. Okay, and then a couple here. A couple more here. I need more on this back side, I can see. Okay, and just keep feeding the beads up as you go all the way down this. Okay, and then when you get to the other end, we're just going to wrap around 2 or 3 times, just like we did at the start. Okay, and then I try and cut this where it's on, there is kind of a flatter side to this, and you can see through the holes when you're on the flat side. So I try and be kind of there when I cut this. And make sure your beads don't pop off your wire, so you might need to feed a little bit more wire out so your beads aren't as close to the end. See, I can't quite see what I'm doing here, but I'm giving myself more wire on the end. Okay, and then take your wire cutters and make sure that this end of the wire is really smushed down into the piece, and into the ribbon would be great. You can kind of pull things up to go over top of it, but anyway, you do want to make sure that you don't have any sharp ends that are going to get snagged on clothing and such. So keep trying to flatten those out. If you want to, you can always put a little dab of varnish or glue or something over top of that, but I haven't found that to be necessary. Just make sure that you work it down into the work as well as you can. Okay, and there's 1 done. Okay, so as you know, we have 20 of these to do. So let's just move a little faster this time. That kind of slipped on me. Okay, make sure that starting end is tucked down in there good. And then I'm going to pull 3, 6, 9, 12 beads. Okay. And then we will start wrapping. And maybe this time I don't want to wrap around as many times. Maybe I want to use, 3 bead sections. Oh, and then maybe a 1. And so this is just completely random. So you position your beads any way you want them. And we are wrapping this wire around pretty tightly, so once they're in place, they're probably not going to move. Okay, and then I come down here, and once again, I'm going to wrap 2 or 3 times, maybe occasionally 4, and cut my wire off. Okay, make sure I don't lose the beads that are on my wire piece, and I'm going to use my tool to push this down into the work. Okay, so you can use any of your pliers, even, let me see if I can get my popsicle stick here. Even the popsicle stick might do a good job pushing this down. Do whatever you need to do to get that end smoothed down really nicely. Actually, that worked really pretty well. Smoothed down nicely into the work, so it's not gonna snag on clothing. Okay, and that is all we're going to do for this part. So go ahead and get all 20 of your pieces wrapped with wire and with beads. And like I said, there's about 12 beads on each of these. And you should have more than enough wire to complete this. You should probably have tons left over. So, you don't have to worry too much about running out with the amount that I gave you in this spool, you'll probably have enough to make another necklace or two. Okay, so keep going with this, and then we're going to come back and link it all together. Okay, so as you can see, I have all of my pieces wrapped with wire and beads. Every one is individual, so they look a little bit different. Obviously, you can do these any way you want. You can put more beads on. You could wrap more times with wire. You could make the wire go up higher and lower up here. Lots of ways to do this, but you can see how, like, this one had a seam on it, so it's really puffy, whereas like this one here is very skinny. Okay, so we want a certain randomness to this as we do it. So now this is the final step, and we're going to start making our chain. And all we do to make the chain is I pre-opened all my jump rings, and I just pick up a bead. I pass through one of my Sari pieces. I pick up another bead and close. Okay, so if you're using, instead of spacers or demis, if you're using size 8 beads, like on this step, you might want to only use one bead, just because this opening is a little bit thicker. So, you know, you can not put a bead on either side of this, but, you know, kind of randomly place your beads around the chain. This is just a 1x1 chain. So, you know, you don't need to overcomplicate it. Okay, so I picked up a bead. I passed through the last jump ring, pick up another bead, and close. Okay. And then we're going to do a third one. Now I'm doing 3 of these jump rings between each of these, but you could do 2, and then maybe on the next one that you're connecting you could do 4. So this does not have to be a set number. I'm doing 3 between all of mine, but you can vary this if you want to. Okay, so now this is my third one. So I picked up a bead, I passed through the last jump ring between the 2 beads, and then I'm going to pick up my second Sari ribbon component. Okay, and then we'll close that jump ring. And then we're going to just keep doing that between all of our sections until we've used up all of our Sari ribbon pieces. Now this will make a long enough chain where you don't need a clasp, but you can also, you know, we could do 3 of these at the end and then put a clasp, and then when we get to the end you could put like a larger jump ring or something to attach, like a lobster clasp or something too. So you can use a clasp, but if you make this real long, it's really not necessary because it'll probably go over your head. Okay, so pick up a bead, pass through the last jump ring between the 2 beads that are on there, pick up another bead, and close. Okay, and you're going to do again 3 of these between each Sari ribbon piece, and then you will be done. And that's all there is to this. But like I said, feel free to randomize it yourself. You don't have to follow the same pattern. Okay, and there's my next piece. Okay, and then I'll show you how these turn out. Okay, so just for the sake of continuity, I wanted to show you the clasp that I included. So you can see that we've got the 3 rows of jump rings with beads at the end here, our lobster clasp, and on the other end I did the 3 rows with the bead, And then I included for you a jump ring that you can use on this other end so that you have a place to connect to. Okay, so this is our champagne and roses, and here is the lagoon that we've been working with. Okay, I'm just trying to give you a close-up so you can see the end and just see that I added those 3 jump rings, the 3 jump rings with beads, and then just the lobster clasp and the ring. Okay, so I hope you had a great time making this. I really hope you enjoyed yourself. I think this one is just loads of fun, and you know, I hope you will add some extra chains in between and lampwork beads or ceramic beads or whatever you'd like to this. This is a project that you can really make your own, so I hope that you will try to do so and had a great time doing this. I will see you next time. Thanks so much for joining me.